Welcome everybody to Sewing in Slippers with Sue. I have just gotten back from my Maine getaway up at the Schoodic Institute in Winter Harbor, Maine. Beautiful, absolutely stunning place. And if you're interested in more information about the retreats at Schoodic, we will talk about that in future episodes. I'm going to leave Bev's information in my comments here so that if you are interested in coming up to Schoodic to retreat with us in 2025, you can get more information about that. Now, here at Sewing in Slippers with Sue, we love to make applique quilts. And today we're going to be diving into some applique quilts for our holiday today. Happy Valentine's Day, no. Happy Halloween. I am so happy that you're here with me on Halloween. Let me know if you're out there. Let me know where you're coming from and let me know your name, because here on StreamYard, I don't see your name. So Irene, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on while you're at Schoodic. Welcome. Well, I have some unpacking to do. So while I do my unpacking from my retreat, I'm going to show you how I packed up my bag to go to my retreat. So unpacking and packing, all about retreats today and how to get ready for that retreat. And then we're going to dive into a quick little project of making a spooky spider for today's Halloween holiday. So we are going to cover a couple of topics today, including getting ready for a retreat or getting back from a retreat, and how to make a spooky Halloween spider and his spider web. So we're going to dive into that project, and I've never done this before. Excuse me. So we're going to be creating together. We're going to figure out how to make this cute little spider together. And I have an idea because I've put on these earrings this morning of this cute little spider, and I'm going to use him as my inspiration. And last time we made a little pig. So the spider and the pig make me think of Charlotte's Web. And so I'm going to need to think about a background to put my spider on and to put my little pig in. So I've got my work cut out for me, but today I'm just going to tackle the spider and the spider web, just brainstorming ways that we can make those design elements for our project. We're not going to work on the project, we're just going to be brainstorming and figuring it out. And when I just am figuring things out, I work with scrap fabric, even paper, in order to figure out my applique design. So we're going to work on that together. But first, let's talk about retreats. Going on a quilting retreat is a wonderful experience. And I am speaking to the choir out here, because a lot of Irene's people are watching this morning. They are up with Bev and Irene Henyon at the Schoodic Institute on a UFO retreat. So they're working on whatever they want to work on. Well, that is one type of retreat that you could go on, and quilt guilds do this beautifully. If you go away with your quilt guild, generally you go to a hotel where there's a huge ballroom and you get to all hang out together for maybe a long weekend, pull out your unfinished projects and keep working on your projects. Now there's another type of retreat that you can go to, and that's the type of retreat that Bev and Irene frequently run, where they bring in a guest lecturer that's going to introduce you to a new topic, a new pattern, and give you some experience in their expertise. Now, I love to have that type of a retreat so that I can introduce more people to rotary cut applique or get them further along their journey. So that's what we did this past week, is we had a rotary cut applique session where we made 2 quilts, possibly even 3 quilts, using rotary cut applique techniques. And a big shout out to all of the people who came to that retreat. We had such wonderful completions in that group. We created a few more UFOs, but a lot of people completed the quilts that they were working on. So that was really exciting. Now I'm getting permission from all of them to post some of those process photos and progress photos and fabulous finishes in my newsletter this Friday. So be watching the newsletter to see some of those fabulous finishes. So what type of retreat do you like to go on? Do you prefer to go on a UFO retreat? Or would you rather have instruction on a particular technique or a particular pattern? I'd love to know in your comments, so write me a comment and let me know what type of retreat you like best. Now we are planning a retreat for 2024. It's just going to be a little bit different than our Schoodic retreat. So we are just formulating a plan for 2024, and if you're interested in coming on a UFO retreat with me, let me know in the comments so that we can keep you on the short list and get you the information that you need. If you'd like to do a UFO retreat where you're finishing your Sue Pellin Designs projects with some help, then we can absolutely talk about doing a UFO retreat next year. Or if you'd like to come to a retreat where there's a specific project you want to complete, put that in the comments too. I'd like to know which project you would like to work on at a retreat. Maybe it's a gradations retreat where you come and work on the gradations project, which is a great beginner project for rotary cut applique. Or maybe there's a project of mine that you've been dying to do and you'd like to do it with me away on a week away. So absolutely put your preference in the comments. Would you like a UFO retreat, or do you want a specific project at that retreat? Let me know. And then we're going to talk about getting ready for your retreat. You would love a finishing retreat, Irene. I agree. And I have a Facebook user, but I don't know your name. And instructions on the retreat, Christina says. So you would like instructions on a specific project. You love the earrings, Mary Pop? Yes. What about a 2025 retreat? Christina, we are planning 2025 at Schoodic, but we haven't gotten dates yet. There is not yet a calendar for 2025. So we're looking for a 2024 retreat, maybe a little closer to home, maybe something in the Boston area. We're going to be planning something going forward with Irene and Bev. Ellie, thank you. Happy Halloween to you and Mary and Irene. Wonderful. And Irene and Bev are together. A specific pattern of applique on the retreat. So Christina, I'd love to know which pattern you would love to have covered, and we can go from there. Well, we have this adorable Halloween pattern, and Irene was working on this on our retreat. She was finishing because she has a lot of Sue Pellin Designs projects started, and she wanted to work on this one to get it finished. So I just took out my box and I realized I have another one started. It's long from finishing, and I thought that could be the backdrop for our spider and our web today. So I'm going to dive into packing for retreat. And to do that, I'm going to actually change my camera. I'm going to go down to my workstation camera so you can see how I had packed for my retreat. Oh, the camera is all out of alignment. So sorry about that. Let me fix that for you. I forgot to check that this morning and realized that I'm just getting back from retreat. So I'm not even unpacked yet and had not looked at my camera setup. So there we go. Well, this is a bag that I pack all of my retreat goodies into. I love this pattern. And when I went on retreat this week, some of the retreat participants had also made this bag. Let me get that camera right on the bag there. So this is a fabulous pattern that's on my website. Penny, if you're there, go ahead and look up the pattern. I can't remember the name offhand, but it's going to come to me in just a minute. I have such a bad memory sometimes when I'm particularly looking for that word. But this is a bag that has all of my goodies inside. And oh my goodness, Bev and Irene are famous for giving their retreaters little presents. And I just love my moose from Maine that really matched my moose slippers that I wore while I was up there. So this little guy is going to remind me of that special group of ladies that I retreated with. So I'm going to sit him right here on my table. And this time at retreat, we did the Hope's Diamond pattern. And the results were so beautiful. Watch my newsletter this Friday for different Hope's Diamonds made in different fabrics where you can see what our retreaters were working on. Now at the back of the Hope's Diamond pattern, there is actually, I think it's now on the front cover, inside front cover, there is a pattern for our Desert Flowers bonus. When you make Hope's Diamond, you end up with leftover pieces where you can make a second quilt, and that's called Desert Flowers. And the Desert Flowers starts with a jelly roll, and then we're going to decorate our jelly roll race quilt with those leftover flower petals from cutting out Hope's Diamond. Well, while we were there, we made our own neutral color jelly rolls that are a beautiful backdrop for that for that Desert Flowers pattern. So there are just 4 or 5 left on my website of this neutral jelly roll, and it's the perfect backdrop for the Desert Flowers pattern. So that's coming out of my retreat bag because we were able to get that accomplished on our retreat. Now also in my retreat bag, I've got all of my tools. So I'm going to grab all of those tools out of my bag and put them back where they belong in my sewing room. I also have my transdoodle and I have my applique pressing sheets. Now we used lots of applique pressing sheets at the retreat to try to keep our irons clean and our workstations clean. So that's something that we need to think about when we're doing rotary cut applique. We're using fusible all the time. And when you're at a retreat, you have to be very conscious of keeping your iron stations clean and your pressing surfaces clean and your irons clean so that other retreaters don't end up using those messy irons and getting fusible on their projects. So one thing we always do when we come back from a retreat is we're going to clean all of the retreat irons, and I'm going to clean my own personal iron. Now, when I'm at a retreat, I always bring with me a Notions bundle. So the Notions bundle that we have on our website has those iron cleaning products in there. So the first iron cleaning product I want to show you is the Iron Clean Sheets by Bo Nash. And the second iron cleaning product that's in here, if I can find it, yes, is the Bowen Iron Cleaner. So I've just gotten back from retreat. I'm going to clean my iron. The first thing I'm going to do is use the iron cleaning sheets and just rub that iron on the bottom of that sheet and see if we can get off the black stuff on the bottom of my iron. That's any fusible that got stuck to the bottom of that iron. If it doesn't come off with the iron clean sheets, I'm going to go ahead and use the Bowen Iron Cleaner. Now, when you use this iron cleaner, it needs to be outside or in a well-ventilated area. So I would use this under my range hood in my kitchen to get rid of all the smoke. So back from a retreat, clean your tools and get ready for your next project. So I need to also put all of my tools away. So I'm going to take them out of my travel bag, and here is my iron erasable chalk and my chalk line and my chalk wheel. These are all essentials in my sewing room. So I want to make sure I put them back exactly where they came from so they are ready for me to use as soon as I get back into sewing mode. So I need a day to clean up and get organized. Not even a day. I need an hour to clean up and get organized. And I'm going to put my beautiful little travel bag away until the next time I'm traveling. So here on my table, this is how I get organized. There's so many wonderful organizers for your tools. And this one was made and designed by Joan Ford. I love this little tool that grabs onto all of your rulers. So this particular one is called the Nest. It's your Nest organizer. And Joan Ford designed this to hold all of her tools. But I swear she designed it for my tools because it is absolutely perfect for holding all these different sizes of your Hearts and More and your Rings and Things tools. Then I took a little magnetic wand here, the one that I use to pick up pins if I drop any pins. I put that right into the holder here, and there I can add my roll of Misty Fuse. So I like to keep a roll of Misty Fuse when I'm demonstrating close by, and so when I'm not on my big ironing table, I keep this roll of Misty Fuse right here on my organizer. Okay, so that one's all set. Now I've got a second organizer. It's the same tool that Joan Ford designed, and it holds my Grace True Grips. I don't need these often, but you know what? When I look at a ruler and I don't have Grace True Grips on the back, I want to have those handy because I want those Grace True Grips on the back of every ruler. Now this ruler has the original Grace True Grips, the clear ones. So they are on here. So I'm going to put my ruler right here in the block, and that's the Your Nest organizer. And then this ruler has the leaf-shaped Grace True Grips on the back of this ruler. So I'm always checking, especially after coming back from a retreat, that I have the right rulers. They're the ones with Grace True Grips on the back. And I'm ready to get started with my next applique project once my rulers are all back into place. Now my big long ruler, I'm going to hang that up on my wall. Extras of my Hearts and More tools, I'm going to hang those up on my wall. So I have one set that's ready at any time right on my workstation. And I've got another set hanging up on the wall just in case I can't find the one that I need. So I've got a pegboard here with all of my rulers, and you're helping me get organized again in my sewing room. So here all three of my Leaves Galore tools sit in this little rack here, and you can see it over here on my table. It just sits right here on the table, ready for me to grab any ruler that I need. So you need to find a system that works for you so you can easily jump right in to your projects once you are back from your retreat. Now another thing that we brought back from the retreat is our design board. And our design board is a free PDF pattern where you can make your own design board for designing applique blocks. And I just happen to have this block started. This is the beginning of our let's see, I'm going to grab the full quilt here so you can see it. All Hallows Eve. So this is the beginning of the All Hallows Eve pattern. The first thing that I do on All Hallows Eve is I create this beautiful reverse applique moon. So I'll take the fabric background that I'm choosing to use. This one has beautiful little trees in it. So it looks like you're looking out into the woods. And when I look out into my woods, I often find some little bats flying by. I've got bats that live in the woods around me. And so I remembered those bats in this cute little Halloween pattern. One flying right over the moon and a couple others off to the side. So let's see how I made that moon. Well, the first thing that you do in the All Hallows Eve pattern is you cut a piece of Misty Fuse. Misty Fuse is my favorite fusible web, and it works beautifully for doing fused applique. Now this is a 10-inch square of Misty Fuse, and I'm going to put a 10-inch square of Misty Fuse on the back of my fabric that represents the woods. So I'm going to put on a 10-inch square of Misty Fuse, iron that on with my fat goddess sheet, and then I'm going to cut out a moon from the center of that fusible square. After I cut out the moon using the Rings and Things tool, and I use the biggest one, then I'm going to fuse a piece of golden fabric to the back of that fusible. So the fusible's on the back of the fabric. Then I cut out my circular shape, and then I put a 10-inch square of golden fabric behind so that it shines through just like this moon right here. Now, isn't this fabric beautiful? This is from our Gradations bundle. And this color is absolutely beautiful. It goes from a light yellow to a dark yellow on the same piece. And so I found a piece that was half light, half dark, and it's absolutely beautiful for the moon. Now I'm just going to cut out my bats, cut out the pickets for my fence, and cut out my pumpkins in order to make the All Hallows Eve pattern. So if you are interested in making All Hallows Eve for next Halloween, we do have a pattern for All Hallows Eve on our website. Now that's a PDF pattern so that you can print it out yourself and get started. But I thought instead of making All Hallows Eve, I thought I would start with this background to make my spiders. Well, recently, one of our guild members passed away, and gosh, her family wanted the guild to have her collection of fabrics and projects, and from that collection, I was so grateful to choose an item from her collection that is all Halloween goodies. So she had all of these goodies put together in a bin for a potential Halloween project. And it made me so sad that she didn't get to that project. So I'd like to, in her memory, start my own new Halloween project using some of these little bits for inspiration. So there's an adorable little spider and spider web in her collection of buttons, and she has these beautiful fabrics, and this one really inspired me. How can we recreate the spider and the web on our project here? So I thought it might be really fun to build the barn or the barn door in the background of this project, and from the corner of that barn door we could have a spider web going right over this moon, maybe right over the entire background of the fabric, and have that spider right here on the moon. So I did have another piece of fabric in that collection that really inspired me. It has these silver webs, and I love the way that the spider webs are made out of these sweet little curves. That inspired me when I was thinking about using my templates in order to cut out these shapes. So how am I going to make that spider web? Well, I have a couple of choices. One way that I can make the spider web is simply to quilt the web using these beautiful iridescent, what do we call this? It is like a sliver. This is the sulky sliver thread here. This is sulky sliver. Okay, and it's like a tinsel. It's a very, very fine metallic that would make an absolutely beautiful spider web if I just wanted to quilt the web over this moon. So I pulled out all of the different colors of the metallics that I had, and I think those two silver ones would be perfect. This is more iridescent, this is just pure silver, and it's a little bit fatter. Now I'm pretty sure that this one is a Wonderfill product, and I don't know the name of it. I'm going to have to look that up, but you can get metallics from any thread company. I love the sulky one. This one is also a beautiful choice. So I could certainly reproduce this quilting design on my piece. So how would I go about reproducing that quilting design on my piece? Well, let's get started with just our regular ruler. So if I take my regular ruler that I just hung up on the wall, then I'm going to use my chalk wheel, and I want to design that spider web. I'd probably offset it so it's not dead center on that moon. And am I going to do it straight up and down? Maybe I'm going to put my spider web at a little bit of an angle. In fact, if this is my barn door, I might just draw a line here that goes from one corner of the doorway down here to this corner. Then I'm going to go at a right angle to that, and wherever I want that spider web to be, let's try it right here. I'm going to go down the middle here, and I'm going to draw another cross for that spider web. Now it would be helpful to have a 45-degree line, because I really want this next line to be at a 45-degree angle to the cross lines here, so that I'll end up with 8 lines converging right down here in the center. Now I do need to figure out where all of these other lines are going to join up with my barn. I'm not quite sure where this one's going to join up, so I'm probably not going to quilt this one all the way down to the bottom. I have to be a little bit more creative than that, because I want to put my pig down here in the barn. So I want to, let's see, let me move over so you can see a little bit more of what I'm doing here. Okay, just have to move a few things aside so I can be a little more centered. Okay, that's better. So now I have to decide which curve am I going to use for my spider web. If I start in close like this, I could draw a circle right in the middle here, but I don't really want a circle, do I? I want the inverse of that. But by marking this circle first, I'm marking the cross point at every angle here that I want to cross with my web. Then, once I figure out where I'm going to cross, I want to make those lines inverted. I want to make them inward facing, that curve inward facing, but I want them evenly spaced. So I could have measured from the center, but I find that just drawing that little circle is an easy way to get that alignment just right. So let's go ahead and mark this inner circle. And then we're going to have some fun deciding how to connect the next one. So we could go with a bigger circle. So this is 2.5. I could go with a 3-inch circle or a 4-inch circle, or I could simply go out further and further with this same curve so it echoes this curve. So that's what I think I'm going to do. I'm going to go about 1 inch away and draw the lines that I'm going to quilt on. Now all of these are just going to be quilting lines, but we should also think about maybe another spider web that actually has curved fabric here instead of just these curved quilting lines. But you know, our spider web should be delicate. So maybe the curved quilting lines are really the best option. But you know, I like to experiment. And I like to figure out different ways to do the job that I'd like to do. So maybe we're going to quilt the lines, and maybe we're going to make them out of some fabric in just a minute here. Now, if I do that same curve, I can just barely fit one more curve here. With that same curve, they're getting a little bit too close. If I make that curve, I'm not even touching those lines. So it's time to go up a size on our tool. Let's use a 3-inch tool and just slide it in between those lines until we touch the lines on the sides and continue to draw our spider web. Now, one of the things that most people worry about with quilting is the fact that they have to figure out where they're going to go next with their quilting lines. And that's hard to think about while you're quilting. So I like to draw all of my lines for quilting using the iron erase chalk. Now the only color that I can't draw on is a pure white fabric. Otherwise, I can draw all those lines ahead of time and get them ready to go so I know exactly where I'm traveling to next, and I don't have to be guessing where I'm going to next as I'm quilting. Having the lines makes you a much more confident quilter. So I'm going to draw a few more lines and then we could get started quilting. The next line I'm going to do, that was the 3-inch curve. If I go out here, I'm not touching the lines. So let's go to our 4-inch curve and see where that brings us. And it looks perfect. It's about 1/2 inch away from the previous line. If we just touch these two lines, okay, we're going further and further out. We're still staying really curvy and pretty for that design. And we can just keep increasing the size as we go out on these lines. But at some point, we're going to say our web is done. So I think at this point, I might just say, I think it looks beautiful. I think my web could be done at this point. So maybe I don't want to go any further out. Let's just do these last 2 lines and we'll see. Yeah, that one's done. So look at that spider web just made by using a simple curve on our cross lines. Some people would say that's your bullseye diagram, right? I often use a bullseye diagram when I'm designing my flowers and different things for my applique, but this made the perfect little spider web. So after we have a spider web, we are going to need a spider right there. So we can use our smallest of our Hearts and More tools to make a tiny little spider, but I think we want it to be a little bit more significant. Let's use the 1 5/8 inch end to make our little spider. Now here is a tiny little spider button that we could use as a reference. I'm going to take off one of my earrings. Here's a cute little spider that we can use as a reference. This one's a little bit more realistic, but with the gems inside, look how adorable. I like the look of these legs on my spider earring. So let's go ahead and try to make a spider that looks a little bit more like this. Wouldn't it be fun to use gems, those hot fix crystals, to jewel up our spider and make her look pretty special? I think I like her heading in that direction, but we're going to need to make her just a little bit bigger. So let's look at the shape of that spider. The bottom of the spider is wider than the top. So we could make a we could make a spider that has kind of a teardrop shape as the body, and then we're going to work on those legs. So let's put our spider web aside, and I have some fabric here that we can play with. Now I have not fused this fabric. I'm not sure if I'm ready to dive into making that spider with our fabric just yet. Maybe we should take some paper and play with that first. So let's grab some of my scrap paper here. Whenever I print on the printer, I take those leftover pieces of paper that went wrong and I cut them in quarters, so I always have some paper to play with. I'm going to grab my rotating mat and my 28mm rotary cutter. My goodness, my rotary cutter did not get unpacked with me. I think it's still in my goodie bag of all of the things that I took home with me. So instead of cutting, we're going to draw first. We're going to see what we can create by using our Hearts and More tool. Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to create kind of a big fat what do we call the body of the spider. It's going to be kind of like a teardrop shape, and a teardrop shape is made by putting the arrow on the fold and then gradually tapering off. So if we were to make our teardrop shape this way, we would get a big fat spider with a pointy tip. Now, once I cut that big fat spider body with a pointy tip, I could go back in and I can round this end right here with the smaller curve. And I have a feeling that's going to be a nice shape for the body of my spider. Now, of course, I could certainly cut this out with my rotary cutter, but because I'm just playing on paper right now, let's see what happens when I use my paper scissors and I cut out that shape. I know I can reproduce that shape with my rotary cutter, But look at that. That's not a bad shape for my little spider. Now I just went and grabbed the little jewels that are the hot fix crystals. And I could certainly see these yellow crystals as the eyes of my spider. And then I've got some more subtle brown crystals, maybe even black crystals, to put on the body of my spider. Now she is pretty fat. I'm not sure I want a spider that is that fat. It's not very delicate looking. So let me see if I can narrow down my spider just a little bit instead of using the arrow on my tool and making a full 1 5/8 inch circle, I'm going to move that over to the 10 degree line, or the 20 degree line, or even the 30 degree line. In fact, I think I'll start here at the 20 degree line and just taper that spider down a little bit. Now, right now I'm using a pencil and scissors, and one of the reasons why I do that is because I want to write down all of my experiments. Oh, I like this shape even better. So this is the 1 5/8 inch end, starting at 20 right here on the fold, and then up on this end I'm going up to the 1 inch hearts and more tool to round this end of my spider. Now I think that looks pretty darn good. Let me just grab my spider earring again and see how that shape looks. Very similar, right? I've blown it up about 200 times, but the shape of that body is very similar to the shape that's on my earrings. Now I'm going to need some legs for my little spider. Now the legs, I think that they really should be almost straight. I don't think that the legs should really be very curved. So in order to do that, I'm going to take the biggest of my Hearts and More tools, and I'm going to just draw some legs with the biggest of the Hearts and More tools. I'm going to go really, really skinny with these legs, just a little sliver. Okay. And if I make them curvy like this, they don't have that joint and that little knee right there. So if I make these little sliver of legs, again, because I'm using paper, I'm going to cut this out with my scissors, but knowing the whole time that I'm going to be able to do the same thing with my rotary cutter. Just getting these very thin little slivers of a curve. Okay, little slivers of a curve. And then I'm going to want to make a little joint here. So I'm going to cut apart these little slivers into smaller segments. And then we're going to see what's going to happen with those smaller segments. We can use them out like this, and then the joint turns, and we're going to have another little sliver in this way to make her little legs. All right, well, we're playing around with this to see what's going to happen. I think that the curve needs to turn inward. One of the items that I have not yet found for unpacking is also in that Notions bundle. I need to grab my pair of tweezers, and my fine point tweezers right here that come in the Notions bundle. This is the perfect tool. Can't find the opening there. Okay. This is the perfect tool for getting all of those little bits and pieces organized. So if I can get these tweezers out of the packaging, oh my goodness, they're really stuck in there. By the way, I'm heading to Texas in a week, and Tooltron, who is the manufacturer of these little tweezers, is right down the street in Boerne, Texas. So I'm going to be visiting Tooltron while I'm in Texas, so I can get some more of these adorable little tweezers. I love them because of the way they are reverse action tweezers, and when you open them, when you squeeze them, they open up, and when you let them go, they hold on to whatever you've got. So these are absolutely perfect for placing the little spider legs on my spider. So that's the idea. Tiny, tiny little thin strips like this to make his little legs or her little legs. All right, so that's one thought. As a way to make those legs, we can just use these small little curves. This one almost doesn't even need to be jointed. The last one just comes on down. Okay, so that's the idea for making all the little spider legs. And we need 8 legs on our spider. Make sure you've got 8 legs there. Now another thought for these legs, and you know how I love to play, what if I used our tool here on the fold and went out from the 90-degree angle to make that little thin line. Now that's not going to give me a knee. I actually need to go up away from that angle. And I'm trying to figure out how I would make this little bend in the spider leg. So it would go up like this, and then it would bend down. So let's see what that curve would be like. If it goes up and then it bends down, we would get this kind of a look right here. What if I cut that right on the fold of the fabric and just cut out this thin little bit? Could I get that little leg in one piece instead of in 2 separate pieces? Well, that's a little too much of a bend, so I'd have to play with the angle. But yes, I can get a bended leg with one cut with the rotary cutter instead of making 2 separate pieces. So I'd absolutely need to play around with that. And then the last thing I'd like to do is make some little googly eyes. Now those little googly eyes are way smaller than our 1-inch circle. So I'm going to need to cut some tiny little circles out of our fabric and add those right to the top of our little spider. Once I've got some little spider eyes, then I probably would go ahead and use these crystals to embellish the little eyes on our spider. So it's coming together. It's not quite there yet. I need to play with my little spider guy just a little bit more, but you can see that this spider is really going to be just adorable on his web. So let's get back to that web. And I want to think about a different way to do the spider web. What if we wanted to cut our curves out of a shiny fabric instead of using the thread to make that shiny look to our web? So I took this beautiful fabric that has a silvery thread running through it. Let's see what happens when I make some little curves with our tool. Now I'm really struggling because I don't have my rotary cutters out of my travel bin. Let's see if I can put my finger. Ah, there we go. I hadn't unpacked yet enough to find my rotary cutters, but here we go. They're in my travel bag that has all of my thread, all of the little gadgets that I've used while I was away. And now let's try cutting this with our rotary cutter. Now my fear is that this fabric is going to unravel pretty easily. So I'm definitely going to use Misty Fuse on the back of this fabric to prevent that unraveling. And I'm going to cut just a little sliver of that curve. Now let's just lay that sliver right out over our background here and see if the thread itself, or if these little slivers of our curve are going to be a better spider web. Well, boy, I'm liking that curve right there. It's a little more significant than just the thread itself. So let's go ahead and cut a couple more of those thin little curves. When I'm making a real thin curve, I cut out the curve first, and then I slide over ever so slightly and cut a second curve. Now this is just all by eye. There are no lines on the ruler for these tiny little slivers, but you can see how sweet they are coming together on this spider web. So I have to decide which method is going to be a better spider web. The thin threads are absolutely beautiful, and they're really a good choice, but are they too insignificant where we're not going to see this thread very well when that quilt is hanging up on the wall? We really won't notice the thread as much as we're going to notice the spider. So using these thin lines of our woven fabric with the silver in the fabric might make more sense. Now, in order to do that, I would also need my solid lines to be made of this fabric. The problem is when you cut this fabric on the straight of grain, it ravels. All these pieces unravel, and you're going to get a mess trying to applique that down, even with the fusible. So if you want some long lines of these metallic threads, you have to go at a 45-degree angle. You have to cut these right on the bias. So let's go ahead and cut one piece on the bias. And then we're just going to cut some tiny little slivers. Now, you might be thinking, there's no way that we could blanket stitch these tiny little slivers onto our design. And you're probably right. They are pretty thin. However, you can reduce your blanket stitch. You can bring it down to a very small little stitch, and you could go right over these little lines. Now we have to be careful that this piece of fabric is not twisted, but you can see how beautifully that would come together with these little curves to start to make our spider web. So if I were stitching this, I probably would use my metallic thread. I could use a blanket stitch right over these curves, and I could go down one side and up the other side with that stitch just wide enough to cover that thin line of fabric. And I think that would be an ideal way to make my spider webs. So my decision is made. I'm going to use the fabric spider webs and not just the thread. Even though the thread is more delicate, more realistic, I'm not going for a realistic look here. I want something that's going to show from a distance. So I love this metallic fabric. It is a woven fabric. I think this was a Michael Miller fabric, and I ended up getting an entire fat quarter bundle with all of these different metallics. So I can't wait to put my little spider in the center of her web. That's going to be so much fun to play with. And I hope that, let's see, I hope that this inspires you to have some fun with your applique and come up with new designs, new ideas, new ways to use the Hearts and More and the Leaves Galore tools so that you can design the quilts that you want to make. Now, if you're looking for a ready-made design for Halloween, I think that All Hallows Eve is a sweet project with the bats, with that scary looking picket fence, with our little pumpkins down on the bottom, and that beautiful full moon. So absolutely, if you would like to make one of my patterns for Halloween, All Hallows Eve is a great pattern that you could make before next Halloween. In fact, this would probably take you a weekend to make. And if you are interested in seeing our barnyard of animals come together, we are going to have a barnyard series in Ahead of the Curve. Ahead of the Curve is our monthly membership, where every month you get to take a workshop with me in the platinum and gold levels, or you get to experiment with the tools in our silver level program, where we have instructional videos on how to use the tools to make all of your common applique shapes. Rotary cut applique is my specialty, and Ahead of the Curve membership dives right into rotary cut applique so you can learn all of these different techniques to apply to your own quilts. Now, we are going to have applique school coming up next week. Next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I'll be holding applique school, where you can experiment with fusible applique, glue applique, and hand applique, and decide which method is best for you. During applique school, we're going to have a couple of specials, and we are going to be inviting new members into Ahead of the Curve. So if you'd like information about the bonuses that happen during our bonus week for Ahead of the Curve, go ahead and sign up for applique school right at SuePellinDesigns.com. There's a banner at the top of the page to get you registered for applique school, and I would love to have you there to decide which method of applique works best for you. If you're like me and you love fusible applique, you're going to love Ahead of the Curve membership, where we do all fused applique blocks, quilts, and projects, and we discover the easier way to applique. Now, I'm going to just jump over here and look at some of your comments. Where can you get the crystals? There are loads of places you can get the crystals, including Joanne Fabrics. I think they have brand name crystals, but you're going to look for the Hot Fix crystals. Hot Fix crystals are Swarovski crystals with a Hot Fix backing that you can iron onto your projects and they become permanent. So you're looking for Hot Fix Swarovski crystals. Put that in Google in your search terms and you will find the crystals everywhere. Sherry's Crystals is a wonderful company that carries all of the different sizes and colors of Swarovski crystals. If you're a quilter, you probably know about Sherry's Crystals. Go ahead and grab your crystals at Sherry's Crystals, and you will have the original Swarovski crystals, which are the most brilliant, they're the shiniest, and they have that perfect Hot Fix backing that makes them a permanent part of your quilt. You can probably grab them on Amazon, but I love to support the little guy. So look for Sherry's Crystals and see if she's still out there on the internet selling the Swarovski Hot Fix crystals. Cynthia says, I love all your ideas and so many uses for your tools. Thank you. Cynthia, it's my pleasure. I have so much fun every Tuesday exploring different uses of the tools. The holidays inspire me. Some crazy things inspire me. You never know what we're going to make here on Sewing in Slippers with Sue. But thanks for joining me, and I'm glad you enjoyed this session. Happy Halloween, everyone. Hey, Eileen, welcome from New York. So glad to see you. In Missouri, you'll probably have to travel, Christina. Yes, if we are doing another retreat, it's probably going to be in the Boston area or in the area of Maine, where Beverly and Irene have their home base. Wonderful. Okay, what to learn, how to do applique. You are great to learn from, and Christmas would be good in 2024. Where do you teach out of in 2024? Okay, 2024 we are looking at doing a retreat out of the Boston area, but you can always learn right here and online. We have our Ahead of the Curve membership, which is an online education method for learning how to do applique in a fast and fun way. I love teaching online because then all of our followers from all over the country can learn to do rotary cut applique with me. So come join us. Come to Applique School. You'll learn about all of my different programs. We have courses, online courses, but we also have an online membership. 2 different ways to learn all of the different ways to use your Hearts and More and your Leaves Galore tool for rotary cut applique. Now I'm so glad you joined us today. Join us every Tuesday here on Facebook as well as on YouTube. We are simulcast on YouTube as well, so you can always find Sewing in Slippers with Sue. These sessions are recorded so you can watch them when you are ready, and you can share them with your friends. So if you're here on YouTube, please like and share. And you can like my channel so that anytime I have a new Sewing in Slippers with Sue, you'll be notified. If you're here on Facebook, join our Facebook group, Rotary Cut Applique with Sue Pelland, and you will get all of these wonderful techniques and tutorials in that Facebook group. Happy Halloween, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful time. I hope you have lots of little ghosts and goblins trick-or-treating at your house. I'm ready, and I'm excited to be here. So happy Halloween. We'll see you all again soon on Sewing in Slippers with Sue.